Welcome back to Python 1. Our last video introduced Boolean values, expressions, and variables. All of these evaluate to either true or false, which is used for decision making at all levels of programming. In this video, we will build if-else statements using these Boolean values, expressions, and variables. Then we will write if-else statements that use a Boolean value returned by a defined function. Let's begin by exploring how if-else statements behave as true-false evaluations. Watch what happens when we simply write true or false into an if statement. If true, notice that true is capitalized because it's a Python keyword, and we'll create a print output statement for the if branch. So our print statement says, true will always execute the if branch. Let's see if that is true. That's what it did. It executed the if branch. Let's try this with the Boolean value false. The branch was not executed. So far so good. But let's give false a job. False will work on the else branch because the else is the alternative action to true. And we'll try it out. There it goes. False executed the else branch. Now, generally speaking, we don't write if-else statements with just true-false keywords as conditions. However, you might want to use them as placeholders when you're testing different branches of your program. Now, let's try some if-else statements with Boolean expressions and variables. Once again, our random walking turtle Tina will generate final x and y positions which can be evaluated. So we'll start by erasing our little lesson on true and false, and we'll set up our condition. Tina ran turn 180, which of course means that Tina is going to randomly turn an angle up to 180 degrees to the left or the right, and then Tina ran walk 75, 520, which means that she's going to walk a distance of 75 steps, and every 5 steps she will turn up to 20 degrees to the left or the right. And let's just make sure our little test is working. There's one random walk, and there's a completely different random walk. Let's continue with our game storyline in which each quadrant represents a kingdom. Let's create a scenario. Our player Tina is attending events, so she needs to know the local time zone, which is different in the East and West kingdoms. She must also gear up for different weather conditions, depending on whether she lands in the North or South kingdoms. And finally, if Tina is lucky enough to land in the Northeast Kingdom, she will be pleased to learn that it is a zombie-free zone and she can relax. Otherwise, she'd better watch out for zombies. Now, let's practice writing some conditions and outcomes. First up, we'll create an if branch with a Boolean expression. As you can see, we suddenly have a lot more code. I fast forwarded to save us a little time. And I started by putting in a comment line which is going to describe what's going on in this code. This program is going to end up being pretty long, and it's important to comment your code so that other people can follow what you're trying to do. So in our first section here, we're checking to see if x is greater than 0 for the final value. So if it's greater than 0, it's going to end up in the Eastern Kingdom, and she needs to set her watch to Eastern Time. That's her true branch. Otherwise, else, she's going to set her watch to Western Kingdom Time, which is the false branch. Let's see how that works. There she is in Eastern Time. And in Western Time. We just tried an example with a Boolean expression. Now let's define and use a Boolean variable. Once again, I've pre-written some of the code, including the comment, to save some time. Let's go ahead and create our Boolean variable. Is north, and we'll make it equal to Tina.getY greater than 0. So that's above the x-axis where it's going to be cold. And the if statement is really easy to write. If is north, colon. Let's run it and see what happens. She ended up down south. She's got to bring her water and sunscreen. Okay, this time we got her in the cold weather. She's up north of the line and she has to bring her coat. So in this case, we tested our Boolean variable. Storing the evaluation in a variable is useful if you're using it more than once in a program. In this game, Tina might look for different types of food depending on whether she is north or south, so we might want to use that variable again. Now that Tina has the correct time and is geared appropriately for the weather, let's write a function to see if Tina lands in the zombie-free zone. Once again, I've saved us a little time by writing the comments and the print output statements. We're going to define our function at the beginning of the program, as our habit has been to do. So we're going to call our function zombie-free. And we write it for capital T, any turtle. So it could be used not just by Tina, but by any turtle. And we can include what we want to evaluate right in the return statement. So in this case, we're going to have x greater than 0 and y greater than 0. Now let's call our function with an if statement down in the main part of our program. Again, I've written a lot of the code. Let's write our if statement. So we're calling the function if zombie free, and this time we're using Tina rather than the generic turtle. Let's see what happens. Alright, we have a true outcome. She's in the Northeast Kingdom. She's getting her welcoming message. Hooray, hooray. Let's try it again. Oh, this time she landed outside of the kingdom, and it says, look out for zombies. You are not in the safe zone. Now, our function was pretty simple. It just evaluated an expression, but they're very handy for complex operations because, as you know, you can define the function once and use it however you like in the rest of the program. If you've ever played a video game, I think you'll start to appreciate just how much code goes on behind the scenes in creating complex situations. Quick review before we go. If-else statements are in fact evaluating Booleans, true or false. True belongs to the if branch and false will go to the else branch. We can use Boolean expressions within our if statements. We can define and use Boolean variables, and we can create a function where the outcome is a Boolean value that gets called by our if statement. Now that you understand how if-else statements use Booleans and are Boolean, have fun creating true and false outcomes that are meaningful to you.